The whistle never stopped. Even after the lantern disappeared into the fog. Even after the word end vanished from the old station sign. Even after Samuel whispered the words that none of us wanted to believe. Blackwood was only the beginning. For several long seconds, none of us moved. The abandoned station had fallen silent again. The glowing rails were dark. The map in Emma's hands was still blank. The notebook felt heavier than it ever had before, as though the 6 words written across its final page carried the weight of every passenger who had ever stepped onto the last train. The last stop has awakened. I read them again. Then again. They never changed. Samuel finally turned away from the tracks. "We can't stay here." His voice sounded different now. Until tonight, Samuel had always spoken like a man who had survived the impossible. Now, he sounded like someone who had just realized survival was never the same thing as winning. Emma carefully folded the blank map. "What happens now?" Samuel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the forest surrounding Blackwood Station. Tall pine trees stretched into the darkness. Their branches barely moved despite the cold wind sweeping across the platform. Then he quietly said, "We find him." I frowned. "The watchmaker?" Samuel nodded once. "If Thomas left you that letter, then he knew exactly where this was heading." I looked down at Grandpa's pocket watch. The hands remained frozen. 11:48 p.m. Only 1 minute had passed. Yet it felt as though an entire lifetime separated us from the moment we first stepped onto the platform. Emma looked at Samuel. "Do you know where he is?" "No." "Then how do we find him?" Samuel reached into his coat and removed the brass compass he had given me earlier. He held out his hand. "May I?" I placed the compass in his palm. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the needle began turning. Not wildly. Not randomly. Slowly. Deliberately. It stopped. Not toward the tracks. Not toward the road leading away from Blackwood. It pointed directly into the forest. Samuel stared at it for several seconds. I was afraid of that. What? He isn't hiding from people anymore. Emma's voice was barely above a whisper. He's hiding from the train. The 3 of us left the station on foot. The deeper we walked into the forest, the quieter the world became. No birds. No insects. Not even the sound of leaves beneath our boots. Only the occasional creak of ancient trees bending against the night wind. The beam of my flashlight reached perhaps 20 feet before being swallowed by darkness. Samuel walked ahead without hesitation. As though he had taken this path before. I finally asked the question that had been bothering me since we met him. "Why did Grandpa trust you?" Samuel kept walking. "I'm not sure he ever did. He wrote your name." "I know. He said to listen to you." Samuel smiled sadly. "He also told you not to trust me with everything." I said nothing. Because he was right. After nearly 10 minutes, Samuel spoke again. "Thomas and I met on the train." The words caught Emma's attention immediately. "You were passengers together?" "Yes." "What was he like?" Samuel laughed quietly. "Stubborn. He kept asking questions. Questions the conductor refused to answer. He believed every mystery had an explanation." Samuel paused. The train proved him wrong. The path narrowed. Branches scraped against our jackets. Somewhere ahead, the compass began glowing. Not brightly. Just enough for us to notice. Emma stepped closer. "Is that supposed to happen?" Samuel's expression hardened. "No." The glow intensified. The needle started shaking violently. Then, it stopped. Pointing toward a narrow trail almost completely hidden beneath overgrown vines. I aimed my flashlight toward it. There was no trail on either side. Only there. As if the forest itself had decided to open a door. Samuel whispered. "We've arrived." I looked around. "There isn't anything here." "No." He nodded toward the darkness ahead. "There is." We followed the hidden path for another 100 yards. Then, the trees ended. Not gradually. Abruptly. Beyond them stood a small clearing. At its center, a tiny railway station. My breath caught. It couldn't have been larger than a single room. Old wooden walls. A weathered bench. One dim lantern hanging beneath the roof. No tracks. No platform. No signs of civilization. Just a station. Standing alone in the middle of the forest. Emma stared in disbelief. "How?" Samuel quietly answered. "Don't ask that question here." The lantern above the entrance suddenly flickered. Once. Twice. Then the wooden door creaked open by itself. Warm yellow light spilled onto the ground. Someone was inside. An old voice echoed from within. "I've been expecting the three of you." Samuel closed his eyes. Relief washed across his face. "He's alive." The voice spoke again. "Don't just stand there. The train already knows you're coming." Samuel stepped through the doorway first. Emma and I exchanged a quick glance before following him inside. The moment I crossed the threshold, the forest disappeared. The sound of the wind. The smell of damp earth. The cold night air. Everything vanished behind us as though someone had quietly closed the world outside. The room was far larger than it should have been. From the outside, the station looked no bigger than an old ticket office. Inside, it stretched farther than my flashlight could reach. Shelves lined both walls. Hundreds of them. Every shelf was filled with clocks. Pocket watches. Grandfather clocks. Station clocks. Mantle clocks. Broken clocks. Perfectly polished clocks. Some ticked. Some chimed. Most had stopped forever. Yet none of them showed the same time. Emma slowly turned in a circle. "This is impossible." A calm voice answered from somewhere deeper inside. "No. It is merely forgotten." Footsteps echoed across the wooden floor. Slow. Measured. Patient. An elderly man emerged from the shadows. He wore a dark vest over a white shirt with sleeves rolled neatly to his elbows. A leather apron covered in oil stains hung from his shoulders. A magnifying lens rested over one eye. His silver hair reached almost to his collar. In one hand, he carried an old brass pocket watch that had no hands. The watchmaker. He looked first at Samuel. Then at Emma. Finally, his eyes settled on me. For several seconds, he didn't speak. Instead, he smiled. Not because he recognized me. Because he had been expecting me. "So," he said quietly. "Thomas finally ran out of time." The words struck harder than I expected. I reached into my jacket and placed Grandpa's pocket watch on the workbench between us. "He wanted us to find you." The watchmaker picked it up gently. He ran one thumb across the scratched silver case. His smile disappeared. He always carried this in the wrong pocket. Samuel blinked. "You knew Thomas before the train?" The old man chuckled. "No. I knew him after." He carefully opened the watch. Inside the lid, something was engraved. I had never noticed it before. 3 initials. TWS. The watchmaker looked at me. "He never showed you this." I shook my head. "What does it mean?" He closed the watch. "My name." Silence filled the room. Emma frowned. "Your initials?" The old man nodded. "My name. Is Theodore William Sterling? Samuel took a slow step backward. No. It can't be. The watchmaker smiled faintly. You remember? Samuel's breathing became uneven. I've heard stories. Everyone has. But you were supposed to disappear over 100 years ago. I did. The watchmaker walked toward the nearest shelf. Hundreds of ticking watches surrounded him. I simply disappeared somewhere the train couldn't follow. He stopped before a massive railway clock mounted on the wall. Unlike every other clock in the room, this one had no numbers. Only 12 empty marks. The hands were moving backward. 1 second at a time. Emma whispered. Why is that clock different? The watchmaker rested his hand against its wooden frame. Because this is the only clock in the world that still remembers. Remembers what? I asked. He looked at me. The first passenger. The room fell silent. Samuel slowly removed his glasses. I thought the conductor was the first. The watchmaker shook his head. No. The conductor was never a passenger. A cold chill crawled through my spine. What do you mean? The old man took a deep breath. For over 200 years, people have believed the wrong story. He looked toward the blank notebook sticking out of my backpack. They believe the last train created the conductor. He paused. The truth is the conductor created the last train. No one moved. No one even breathed. Every clock in the room ticked together. Thousands of tiny metallic sounds. Perfectly synchronized. Tick. 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 The watchmaker continued. He was once an ordinary railway engineer. He had a wife. A daughter. A home. And one terrible night, he made a choice. Emma quietly asked. What choice? The watchmaker closed his eyes. He refused to let death arrive on time. A low rumble rolled beneath the floorboards. Every clock stopped. At once. Silence. Complete silence. The watchmaker's face changed instantly. His eyes snapped toward the window. No. Samuel followed his gaze. What is it? The old man whispered only 2 words. Too late. Outside. A train whistle echoed. Not from miles away. Not from the forest. Directly outside the station. Long. Low. Close enough to shake the glass. The lantern above the door extinguished itself. Darkness swallowed the room. Then, something heavy stopped on the other side of the wall. Metal groaned. Steam hissed. The unmistakable sound of carriage doors opening echoed through the night. No tracks had ever led to the station. And yet, the last train had arrived. No one spoke. The 3 of us simply stared at the old wooden door. The whistle had stopped. Now, there was only silence. Not ordinary silence. The kind that settles over a place moments before something changes forever. The watchmaker slowly reached beneath his workbench. When he stood again, he was holding an old railway lantern. Its brass frame was blackened with age. Instead of an orange flame, a pale blue light flickered inside. Samuel's eyes widened. You still have it? I never let it out of my sight. What is it? Emma asked. The watchmaker handed the lantern to me. For tonight. It belongs to the keeper. The moment my fingers wrapped around the handle, the flame brightened. Not blue anymore. Deep gold. The same color as the lantern we had seen outside Blackwood. The watchmaker nodded quietly. I hoped I was wrong. What does that mean? I asked. It has accepted you. A heavy knock echoed against the station door. Once. The entire room shook. Every clock on the shelf swung slightly. Twice. Dust drifted from the ceiling. 3 times. The glass covering the backward moving railway clock cracked from top to bottom. Emma instinctively stepped backward. They're trying to get in. The watchmaker shook his head. No. They don't need permission. The door slowly opened by itself. Not violently. Almost politely. Cold fog rolled into the room. It hugged the wooden floor without rising higher than our ankles. Beyond the doorway, nothing could be seen. No train. No tracks. Only white mist stretching endlessly into darkness. Then, footsteps. 1 pair. Measured. Evenly spaced. Each step accompanied by the faint sound of a pocket watch ticking. Tick. Step. Tick. Step. The figure emerged from the fog. Not the conductor. A passenger. An elderly woman wearing a dark green coat from another era. She carried an old leather suitcase with both hands. Her silver hair was tied neatly beneath a small hat. She looked ordinary. Completely ordinary. She stopped just inside the doorway. Her tired eyes slowly met mine. Then she smiled. I knew someone would still be here. The watchmaker's expression changed instantly. Margaret. The woman nodded gently. It's been a long time, Theodore. Samuel stared between them. You know her? The watchmaker didn't answer. Margaret looked around the room. Her smile faded. So many clocks. You never stopped collecting them. I promised I wouldn't. She lowered her suitcase onto the floor. I promised I'd wait. Emma whispered. Wait for what? Margaret didn't look at her. She continued staring at the watchmaker. For him. Silence filled the room. The watchmaker slowly removed his glasses. His hands trembled. You never got off the train. I tried. She smiled sadly. It never lets us leave for long. A cold shiver ran through me. She wasn't a ghost. She cast a shadow. Her footsteps left wet prints on the wooden floor. She was real. Or at least, as real as Grandpa had been. The watchmaker took one hesitant step forward. You haven't aged. Margaret quietly laughed. Neither have you. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. It felt less like two strangers meeting, and more like two people whose goodbye had lasted a century. Samuel finally broke the silence. The train sent her. No. The watchmaker's voice was barely audible. It sent a message. As if answering him. Margaret slowly opened her suitcase. Inside. There was no clothing. No photographs. No belongings. Only a single envelope. Black. Sealed with dark red wax. Across the front. Written in elegant handwriting. Were 4 words. To the first keeper. The watchmaker didn't touch it. Instead, he closed his eyes. I prayed this day would never come. Emma looked at me. What does first keeper mean? The watchmaker finally picked up the envelope. The wax seal broke with a soft crack. Inside, 1 sheet of black paper. Only 1 sentence had been written. He read it silently. The color drained from his face. Samuel grabbed his arm. What does it say? The watchmaker slowly handed me the letter. My hands shook as I read it aloud. The timetable is complete. Return what was stolen. Or the last stop will open before the next full moon. The room fell silent. Then, the golden flame inside the lantern in my hand suddenly stretched upward. Not like fire. Like a finger. Pointing toward the back wall. Every clock in the room chimed together. Not randomly this time. Exactly 11 times. Then, 1 more. A 12th chime. The backward moving railway clock stopped. Its wooden frame slowly slid sideways, revealing a hidden passage descending beneath the station. Cold air poured upward from the darkness below. The watchmaker stared into the opening. "I've kept that door closed for 119 years. Samuel whispered. "What's down there?" The watchmaker answered without taking his eyes off the staircase. "The one thing the conductor has been searching for since the very first journey." He looked at me, then at the lantern glowing in my hand. Finally, he spoke the words that made my blood run cold. "Daniel, if we go down those stairs, there is no longer any road back to the world you came from." The golden flame flickered. The darkness below seemed to breathe. And somewhere beneath the station, a child laughed, very softly, as though it had been waiting in the dark for centuries. No one moved. The child's laughter echoed once more, soft, distant, yet somehow, it sounded as though it came from directly beneath our feet. The watchmaker lifted another lantern from the wall and lit it with the golden flame from mine. Immediately, the laughter stopped. He turned toward us. "Stay close. And no matter what you hear, don't answer anyone who calls your name." Without another word, he stepped onto the stone staircase. Samuel followed. Emma reached for my hand. Her fingers were ice cold. Neither of us said a word. Together, we descended into the darkness. The air grew colder with every step. Not the kind of cold that comes with winter. This felt older. The walls were carved from black stone instead of earth. Symbols covered every surface. Circles, stars, railway lines that crossed and twisted into impossible shapes. At the bottom of the staircase stood a single iron door. There was no handle. Only a keyhole shaped like the face of a pocket watch. The watchmaker removed Grandpa's watch from his coat. He looked at it for several long seconds. "I promised Thomas the First would never do this again." He gently pressed the watch into the keyhole. A deep metallic click echoed through the chamber. The door slowly opened. Beyond it, there was no room, no tunnel, no underground station. There was only a vast darkness stretching farther than my eyes could follow. Then, one by one, lights began to appear. Tiny golden lights. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Floating in the darkness like distant stars. Emma whispered. "What are they?" The watchmaker answered quietly. "Every journey the last train has ever taken." As the lights drifted closer, I realized they weren't stars. They were lanterns. Each one hanging beside a railway platform. Each platform suspended in endless darkness. Each one a station. Forgotten. Erased. Waiting. My breathing became shallow. "There are hundreds." The watchmaker slowly shook his head. "No. There are thousands. And every year, another one disappears." A low rumble rolled through the chamber. Not beneath us. Above us. The lantern in my hand flickered violently. The watchmaker's face hardened. "He's here." Before I could ask who, every lantern in the darkness went out. At once. Complete blackness swallowed the chamber. Then, a single white glove appeared. Floating in the darkness. Perfectly clean. Perfectly still. Another appeared. Then the outline of a black coat. A silver pocket watch chain. The brim of a conductor's cap. The conductor stepped forward from the darkness as though he had always been standing there. He wasn't looking at Samuel. He wasn't looking at Emma. He wasn't even looking at the watchmaker. His eyes were fixed on me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he smiled. The same calm smile. Patient. Certain. Like a man who had finally arrived exactly where he expected to be. He slowly removed his cap and bowed. "Welcome, Keeper." The words echoed through the darkness. Not once, but again, and again, and again, as though hundreds of unseen voices had spoken them together. Emma gripped my arm. "Daniel." I couldn't answer, because the notebook inside my backpack had become unbearably hot. I pulled it out. The blank pages began turning on their own. Faster, faster, until they reached the final page. The words "the last stop has awakened" faded away. In their place, a new sentence slowly emerged. Not written in ink, but burned into the paper itself. "The final timetable begins at midnight." The conductor looked at the page, then back at me. 3 nights. His voice was calm. "No more." He placed his cap back on his head. "Bring me what was stolen, or every forgotten station will return." He took 1 step backward. The darkness swallowed him instantly. Gone. As though he had never been there. The lanterns reignited one by one. Silence returned. No one spoke. The watchmaker slowly closed the iron door. His hands trembled for the first time since we had met him. Samuel finally broke the silence. What did he mean? The watchmaker didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at me, then at the notebook. Finally, he whispered the words I had been dreading. Thomas didn't hide an object. He hid a choice. And if the conductor gets it back, the last train will never need passengers again. He turned toward the staircase. We leave before sunrise. There isn't much time left. As we climbed back toward the surface, I looked once over my shoulder. The iron door had already disappeared into the darkness, as if it had never existed. But just before the last light from my lantern left the chamber, I thought I saw something move among the distant platforms. A small figure, standing alone beneath a lantern, watching us, waiting. When I blinked, it was gone. Outside, dawn had begun to break over the forest. For the first time in days, the sky wasn't gray. It was painted with pale gold. Beautiful, peaceful, almost ordinary. But I had learned something about ordinary places. They often hid the darkest secrets. And somewhere beyond the trees, the last train was already preparing to depart. Its final timetable had begun. If the final timetable has already started, what exactly did Grandpa steal from the conductor, and why would the fate of every forgotten station depend on it? We'll uncover that truth in the next video.